Duane, so good to see you again. This is so fun, twice in 1 week that we get to actually, or yeah, I guess it's about a week that we
Yeah,
get to
absolutely.
talk
Yeah.
and about all the things that we talk about. So welcome to Hope Stream.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I think we got introduced on the Keep Coming Back film,
That's
which I'm
right.
also trying to kind of promote in the background. It's being shot right now, but it's, I think, one of the only films from the perspective of the parents around addiction and substance use. And
Yeah.
so I know you're excited about it. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a piece that often gets missed in this is all the family members that are impacted by addiction and all the hurt and pain that comes with that.
Yeah. So I had Mark Rossman on. Did you have Mark on your podcast?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're listening, just, you know, do your search, find Mark Rossman. It's going to be a great film. I think they just started filming in Utah, which is cool.
That's super exciting.
So anyway, that's that. But we wanted to chat today. First of all, tell us a little bit about you. I'm curious because I always love the origin story of a podcast, how you started The Addicted Mind and a little bit about what you do day to day.
Yeah, well, I'm Duane Osterland. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been in practice almost 2 decades now, which seems like such a long time. And
It's like,
I'm
how did that
also,
happen?
yeah. And I'm also a certified sex addiction therapist supervisor. And I run a group practice in Long Beach, California called Nova's Mindful Life. And also do the Addicted Mind podcast. And gosh, I've been doing the Addicted Mind almost 7 years, actually, which is a long time. I kind of got into podcasting before it was super big. It was getting big. And, the real reason, honestly, the real reason I started the podcast was I thought, well, it's good exposure and good for business. And this is my profession. And I wanted people to understand all this work. But it's grown into something so much more than that. I couldn't have predicted that when I started. And now I just love doing it because I get to interview all these amazing people who have come through some of the hardest things in life and gotten to the other side. And I always find that so inspiring. And like I get to talk with people like you. And then at the same time, with that, the other part I love about it is that it helps people not feel so alone in especially this area of addiction and mental health. And I think it brings people together and lets people know that, they're worthy of healing. There is hope out there because these situations can feel so hopeless. So I love doing it. And that's how it all kind of started. And it just comes together.
I love it. Could you have ever imagined, like when you were in grad school and becoming a new therapist, that someday you would have this huge podcast? Like, it's such a cool thing that there's this new avenue, right, for bringing this information to light.
Yeah, I would have never thought that at all. And I
Yeah.
feel really grateful that I get to do it. And once again, get to meet all these amazing people and just share this. And I think what's also really I love about it, one more thing, is that when people reach out to me and, they listen to some of these episodes and they just thank me for doing it, I just realize like how meaningful this is to people. And sometimes, when we're behind the microphone and we're doing this and we're talking to each other, we don't realize like all the people that this influences and can help and support. And that's really meaningful to me to be able to see that.
Yes, and that's why I started Hope Stream, because I was like, wait, I'm doing this work with moms. I was doing coaching. I'm not a therapist, 1-to-1. And I just thought, gosh, this feels so slow. Like it's going to
Yeah.
take a really long time to help very many people. And so the podcast, yeah, like we sit here 1-to-1. It's very cozy and casual and all that, but thousands of people get to hear your expertise. And I am so grateful for this conversation because, in our community in Hope Stream, we talk mostly about mental health and substance use and addiction as a, kind of a part of that. And I noticed recently that so many of the moms in our community are worried about tech addiction. And I think tech addiction is a little bit of a safe term for porn addiction,
Yeah.
right? Because some kids are looking at, like, I don't know, mechanical stuff or quantum physics on their phones, but there's a lot of them that are not. There's a lot that's available out there. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for you coming on today and sharing your expertise around this, because it's something we don't talk about enough. And I don't even know the scale of the problem like you do. I have to imagine it's a huge problem.
Yeah, I think it is. As we were talking earlier before we started recording, I was telling you about my experience in this field, and I worked in sex and porn addiction almost from the beginning. And that started because I was working in a treatment center. It was a Prop 36 program in California at the time, and it was a treatment in lieu of jail time, right? And I was
Okay.
working there a lot. And as I started to work with clients, this issue started to come up. And, it took them a long time, often after they had, gotten some sobriety. I have this other issue and I don't know how to talk about it. And we would start to talk about it. And then from that, I started to get my training in that and became one of the first CSAT out there in the beginning training in this area under Patrick Carnes. And kind of took it from there and have been working in this field, in this part, in sex addiction, porn addiction, betrayal trauma for most of this time. And this is where most of my experience lies. But as you were saying earlier, I'm going to go back to what you were talking about, parents and kids. One of the things that I've seen in the evolution of the field is when I started, most of my clients who came in maybe were in their 30s and 40s and 50s, maybe even 60s, would come in and say, hey, I have this problem with sex. I can't seem to stop. It's out of control. It's causing problems in my life, and I don't know what to do about it. And that was usually most of the clients coming in in that age group. So it hit some kind of crisis. Maybe their partner had found out. Maybe they got arrested for something, for prostitution, and everything spiraled out of control. And then, they're in this situation, they need support. But what I've seen in the last, I would say probably 10 years is younger people contacting our office, which I had never experienced before. And these younger people, and when I say younger, I'm saying like 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds, calling us and saying, I have this problem, right? I have this issue. And I'm stuck in this world of porn and I can't get out. My life has become engulfed by it. And they're 23. Right.
Which
And you
means it's
don't
probably
think
been
about
going
that,
on for a
right?
while.
That sex has become so problematic to them at such a young age. And I don't know if there's any research on this, but my guess is that that's also when, if you start looking at the age of when people are exposed to porn and online porn, these are young people that were exposed to porn early in their childhood, 12, 13. Actually, this is a really sad statistic. The average first exposure to online porn now is 10 years old,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is really shocking. And
Yeah.
you want to protect your kids from that, because the thing is, with online pornography, our brain wasn't really wired for high-speed internet pornography. It just wasn't. And so you get these young brains seeing very intense sexual material, and the brain reacts to that. And their brain is in a very highly malleable state in this age of development. So these young people would come in. Now, what was also very surprising to me, they would come in to get help and support. My life is out of control. I can't have relationships. I'm spending every waking moment just scrolling on my phone on pornography, and I know it's ruining my life. Now, what's also kind of interesting here, the older people, there was a lot of shame around their behavior when they came in, in the 40s and 50s and 60s. They come in with a lot of shame around sexuality and everything. This younger generation, it's not so much the shame, right, that was a part of it, because in some ways it seems like everybody is looking at porn. All their friends are looking at porn. And so they don't feel that about it, but it's out of control. They know this is destroying their life and they can't stop. And it's available to them 24/7, wherever they're walking with their phone. It's just there. And so they can't get away with it. They can't get away from it. Now, what was also interesting is that it seemed to be easier for these older people who did not have this early exposure to pornography, actually had an easier time stopping than these younger individuals who had exposure to porn at a very young age, 13 years old. They had a much harder time stopping because it was so, my thought is it's so ingrained at that point into how they cope with life and how they cope with distress. And so they really needed a lot of support around them and encouragement. And they needed it with their peers too. One of the things that we started here was just a group for younger people, right? And I used to never have groups for younger people. And now here we are, and these from 20 to 30-year-old individuals coming in and saying, I have this issue. And I would say I'm talking a little bit from the male perspective, but also women struggling with this as well are also showing up and saying, I have this issue with pornography as well. Sometimes it manifests a little bit differently. And for women, there is a lot more shame for them. And so they have a really, really hard time reaching out for help as well. But it's there and it's a real issue.
Wow, I have a billion questions that are just rolling through my head about all of this. I think the first thing when I listen to you, it sounds to me a little similar to when I hear eating disorder therapists talk, because you can't just take food out of your life. If you're addicted to food, you still have to eat. With this, you still have to be, like, you can't just take all technology away, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
could for a while, like you could do a kind of a detox, but to live in this world, you have to basically have a smartphone. You have to be online a lot. So it seems like that's an added layer of complexity versus if you're addicted to cocaine or fentanyl, let's just remove all of that from your life, right?
Right.
So do you see that? Is it like, how do I navigate a digital world when part of that digital world is completely ruining my life?
Yeah. And I would add to this, as in your comparison to eating disorders, is that, you have to have food in your life. We also have to have sexuality in our life, right?
Mhm.
That's a deep part of who we are, and we need to be able to have healthy sexuality. So we can't just cut ourselves off from our sexuality when we're working to heal from compulsive and maybe deceptive sexuality. We can get into that piece as well. But, so you have that. And then we're in this technological world where, you can't function without a cell phone, right? A lot of times parents want to say, okay, I want to keep my young child off a phone as long as I can, which I think is a really, really good choice, as long as you can. But they're bumping into situations where, the teacher at school says, okay, take out your cell phone and scan this QR code to get the worksheet to do the thing. And if they don't have a phone, they can't function. And then on top of that, well, all their friends are on Instagram or, TikTok. Then that's how they communicate to each other. They text each other through that. So then it isolates them. So there's this really, really delicate balance of helping young people and protecting them until they are old enough to make whatever decision they need to make around their sexuality and what's right for them. But it is a challenging situation.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of every conference I go to, what I hear is we haven't even really seen, like, all we're seeing right now is the tip of the iceberg as far as the COVID effect. And so I'm thinking about
Yeah.
8, 9, 10-year-olds who were at home in their rooms on devices all day during COVID, knowing that age where, they're first introduced to porn. And so now those kids are 14, 15, 16, in that range, and what the impact of that must be when when it's so prevalent and all the kids are doing it. And some kids are starting to realize, like, oh, this is actually impacting my life. And I don't even know, like, what is the long-term impact of that? either exposure, early exposure, or when it becomes addiction. Like, I think we can fast forward on a THC addiction or a fentanyl addiction or cocaine or meth. Like, we kind of know that road. We know where that goes. It's usually jail or a grave or very dysfunctional life. Do we know where this addiction leads? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, from a society perspective, from the bigger macro picture, I still think we're learning that. We don't know exactly how that's going to turn out in the long term, but I think it's definitely going to have an impact. That's what my gut says from what I see. The other part is for the individual, what I see is a lot of isolation, depression, malaise that there's a hopelessness in them, and it consumes so much of their time that they don't have other interests, right? One of the things that happens is that becomes so much a part of their life that it is their main interest. And so all these other things that you would develop to lead a happy life, to get satisfaction, contentment, enrichment, they just don't have anything built. And then they, through this age, that's the age of discovery, where you discover what is interesting to you. You discover what you want to do. You try things, you do things. But because porn has taken up all of their time, they have no idea. And so they get stuck there. And that's another challenge that they have to face. So they have to not only remove porn and protect themselves from pornography, and that might be setting up a lot of restrictions on their phone. Once an individual comes in and goes, okay, I really want to change this, then, they voluntarily put the restrictions on their phone. Because, what I say is, like, we've got to outsmart your own brain, because your brain is going to lead you down this path. And we have to be smarter than that. And if you want to do that, but then they have to go through all of the depression. It takes time for the brain to reset from all of this. And then, here they are not knowing what brings them joy in their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they haven't had the opportunity to explore that. So that's the other challenge, because then they don't feel good and they feel hopeless, and what's the point? And there's no joy here. So it really robs these individuals of that joy.
It sounds,
yeah.
It sounds so similar to a substance addiction.
I think it really is in the same way. I mean, there's been a lot of argument around whether sex can be addictive or not. And some people are saying, no, it's not. But one of the things I think most people can agree on is that sex can become problematic for people. Just like gambling can become problematic. It's a behavior, and the way our brains are wired, for some individuals, this does become or mirror an addictive compulsive process. I mean, what you want to call it, I guess, can be up for debate. You want to call it compulsive sexual behavior, you want to call it sex addiction, you want to call it out of control sexual behavior, hypersexual behavior. That's fine. I know the people that come in, they're struggling and they're hurting and they need help changing their behavior, because they know they're not living their best life and they know it. And so that's part of it.
Yeah, you can put whatever name on it you want. It doesn't really matter as much as when you're seeing it in real life, day to day. What would a parent, because I imagine there's parents listening who are getting this extreme anxiety building in their chest about. And as the mother of 4 boys myself, I think about this and I'm wondering what would be an indicator to us, and especially if there's other substances involved. And I'm curious to know, is that common? Like, would you see a THC gaming sex addiction, or does it tend to be more just one? Because where I'm going with this is, like, what would a parent potentially be seeing that might be an indicator that this is a conversation we should probably have?
Yeah. Well, the way I look at addiction is that it all overlaps, right? Addiction at its core is about escape. It's about avoidance. It's about escaping and avoiding pain. So usually you see addictions interact with each other, right? So oftentimes, like I was talking to you earlier, when I was working in the Prop 36 program and working with addicts, they would get off whatever their substance was, right? And because they're still working on their pain, sex became the alternative way of coping and escaping and avoiding. When we're feeling sexual, we're not feeling pain. When we're feeling sexually aroused and excited, we can focus on that. And we don't have to focus on what's hurting or the things that I got to fix or the job that's not, where am I going to work next week or whatever it is, or this problem, this relationship problem. So when I look at that, they all interact. And I think it starts as a society and as us being able to talk about it and put it out in the open and say, this is what, people can struggle with this, right? That this can be an issue. And do you need support about this? But the thing with sex is that there's also so much taboo around it, especially in our culture. We don't want to talk about it. We're afraid to talk about it. We're afraid to discuss it. We want to just, put it over there and let's not look at it. And so the discussion doesn't happen. And I think that leads to more isolation, more shame, and still an inability to, get support. And I would say for parents, I really think the best thing you can do is if you have a home internet, right, lock it down, so to speak. There's tons of systems out there that can block this stuff, make it a hurdle for kids to accidentally stumble upon it, right? And I think that's a really important element. But the other thing, as a parent myself, I also realize I can do that at home, but there's their friends and other parents who aren't going to be as thoughtful, that they're going to be exposed to it. So having the discussion about it, talking about it, saying, hey, this, I want you to know this is out there and, you have to make a decision about what you're going to do with this. Pull the shame out of it so that that's there, because they will see it. We're not stopping that, and we won't stop that. Right. Yeah. So it's going to be there. So more of an open conversation, I think is critical to that.
I love that. And it sounds exactly like how we guide parents to have the conversation with their kids about substances, which is often through the friend angle. Do you have a friend that you're worried about? Is this something that your friends are looking at? Well, how do you feel about that? So It sounds like it could be a similar conversation, but I think there's another layer to this that we also have talked about, which is if you are concerned about your own relationship and maybe your partner, you're not sure exactly what's going on with them, or maybe there's been betrayal. And I know you're an expert in partner betrayal. And so maybe we can tap into that a little bit, because I think that could be a really triggering layer to say, I have this thing potentially going on in my my spouse relationship. I don't think I can even touch what might potentially be going on with my kid. I'm just going to kind of, like you said, we're going to kind of set it over there and just hope for the best. So how does all of this play into the family dynamic?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And that is one of my areas of expertise. Working in sex addiction and porn addiction, we're often in relationships with others. And because that is secretive or deceptive, when someone's engaging that in an addictive and compulsive way, that creates trauma within the relationship. And that's a huge, huge issue that comes in. And oftentimes what I have seen is, there's a partner who is concerned about their kids and talking about their kids and making sure their kids are safe. And meanwhile, their partner is over here engaging in pornography or what I would say deceptive sexuality. That's the key piece. It's deceptive and they don't know about it. And then those worlds collide together and create an immense amount of trauma for the betrayed partner.
Mm. That sounds like an overwhelming situation to be in. And I was telling you before we started here that just in the last year, I've had two friends that have really had big issues in their marriage with this between online addiction, porn addiction, real life.
Yeah.
And I think there is just so much awkwardness and shame. And like, I would in a million years rather talk about fentanyl than sex, right?
Right. There
Ask me
is.
anything you want about a substance. And so that just probably adds a layer of, like you said, secrecy and let's just make this go away somehow. But that can't be good for a relationship.
No, not at all. And I think there's a key part here in this that often gets missed. Now, and what really is here and where the betrayal comes from is that deceptive sexuality. This comes from Omar Minwalla's work, and he calls it the secret sexual basement. And the analogy is, imagine you have a house, right? And everybody's living in the house and everybody's going around doing their business, cooking meals and watching TV and everything. And one person in the house has this secret sexual basement that they go to and do whatever they're going to do in there, right? And disappear. And no one else in the house knows that this is there, right?
Right.
And if you think about it, the partner who may have, like, something seems off here, right? Something doesn't seem quite right. And the person who has a secret sexual basement is like, oh no, everything's just fine. Don't worry about it, right? But it's like, it's there and it's present in the family system. And that impacts everybody when there's deception. And then when that secret sexual basement, let's say something happens and it blows up, right? All of a sudden, maybe their partner discovers the secret sexual basement somehow, right? They're vacuuming one day and they pick up the carpet and they see there's a door and they go down and they go, holy moly. And then that causes an immense amount, what we call like discovery trauma for a partner. And it's really a reality fragmentation where they thought the house was built like this. And all of a sudden, there's this piece of information that changes the whole structure of the house. And they are left in a state of shock, right? And this is where their reality literally fragments and they don't know where to put all of these pieces together.
Yeah.
And so they actually go into post-traumatic stress. And then as they realize this, right, they realize the deception of it, right? And then they start to question everything, right? It's like, well, what was happening 2 years ago? Were you acting out then? Did you see a prostitute then? Were you acting out with porn then? What about this? What about this? All the way back to the start of the relationship. And so everything falls apart and the partner doesn't know how to do it. And I can go into a little bit of the biology of that and how that works in the brain, because
that'd be great.
I think that would be helpful for this piece. So this analogy comes from a colleague of mine named Jake Porter, and I like it. It's a filing cabinet analogy. So we have two parts in our brain here. One, we have the amygdala. The amygdala is it's a small little pea-sized part of the brain. It's our fight, flight, and freeze and response. It alerts us that there's danger going on, right? And then we have the hippocampus, and the hippocampus part of our brain helps us form memories and sort memories, right? Sort them. So we have a story of our life. We have the story of our life. Having a story of our life helps us feel safe. If we have a story, we can predict our environment, and our brain says, if I can predict the environment, I can keep you safe. We are threat animals, so we are always looking for threat. Right. So what happens when someone is exposed to deceptive sexuality and they have this discovery trauma, this new piece of information that changes everything, right? They discovered the secret sexual basement. It changes everything. It's like that filing cabinet that the hippocampus kept in order is now thrown out over the ground. And all the files, all the memories are now, they don't make sense. And so the brain doesn't know how to sort that information to keep the person safe. So what you'll see with a betrayed partner is they will ask question after question after question. They will search everything because the brain has the priority to keep them safe and to sort their memories so they can feel safe. And the brain can predict the environment. Now, so this information comes in, and that is so unsettling. So often you'll see with betrayed partners, they'll ask the same question over and over again from a different angle, from a different way. They'll search everything. They'll go through every single phone because it's a survival response.
Yeah,
And
that
so
makes sense.
they get stuck in that post-traumatic stress. And then, of course, going back to the family, right? This impacts the whole family. And I see parents, when I work with couples, it breaks my heart because they want to try and protect the kids from this, their children, right? But it's so overwhelming that it comes out everywhere. They're trying their best. And so they need a lot of support, but it impacts the whole family system. And even that, you realize as kind of clarity happens, that secret sexual basement, you also realize how that, through the history of the family, has impacted the family structure too. Because if a partner is engaging in this secret sexual basement, and that means they're giving time to that, just like we were talking about the young person who is, engulfed in pornography, that is taking all of their time. So a person who's engulfed in their secret sexual basement, right? It's taking time from kids, it's taking time from the relationship, and that has had this whole negative impact as well. So it can be really, really, really devastating. And oftentimes we miss the intensity of the trauma for the betrayed individual.
Yeah. Is it even possible to come back from something like that from a marriage standpoint? I mean, you're the person working with folks, so do you see marriages that can stay intact, or is it kind of like this is too much for a relationship to heal from?
Well, I do this work, and the surprising thing is that most people and most relationships do stay together. Now, we often think as a society, it's like, if that happened to me, I'm out. And some relationships that does, but the majority of people do work it out. When you get to the reality of the situation of leaving a relationship, there's so many things to consider, right? There's kids, there's family, there's history. And
Yeah.
if the person who's done the betrayal, right, is struggling with an addiction and they really want to do the work, they have to take the lead in that healing process. But it absolutely is possible. I think the thing that is really, really hard is that piece of shame around this. When we look at it, addiction in some ways is rooted in trauma, but it's rooted in shame. And so the person who's done the betrayal has to work on that piece so that they can actually show up for their partner and offer that empathy that they're going to need to heal. And there's a long road for that, but absolutely relationships do heal. And what's interesting is when the person who's done the harm, right, makes the amends and really, really works on this, and then the partner's been betrayed, decides to stay, oftentimes, it's hard to hear this when you're in it, but oftentimes their relationship is so much stronger than it ever was before. It has a deep meaning to it. Now, I would say the caveat is that the person who has the addiction and is struggling with the addiction is really willing to do the work and work on that piece.
Yeah, that would be critical because I could just imagine there's a huge amount of resentment on the side of the partner who realizes all of a sudden the deception, the time
Yeah.
away, the financial aspect of it, all of that would just be So, I mean, I just think about some of the little quibbles I have with my husband about dumb stuff, and I can hold on to that resentment, like, "You didn't unload the dishwasher when you were supposed to." Like, I can't even wrap my head around how difficult that would be and how much dedication and work it would take to work through something like that and say,
Yeah.
"We're both gonna put in the effort." But
It's
especially
really, really hard. And I would just add to that one piece here is that it really is up to the person who's done the betrayal to do the work. The person who's been betrayed, in a way, has to stay on the, how do I say this? They don't have to make a decision about the relationship, right? They've got to see that this person is going to show up and it's going to take time. This is not something that gets fixed in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. This is a 2 to 3 year process of a lot of work and a lot of help. One of the things that I'm doing is the Shame to Resilience course for this specifically, because oftentimes the person who has the addiction, right, they are filled with shame already
right.
in their core. And if they can't heal that shame, they can't heal their partner, but they can't heal themselves either. And this is just for addiction in general, right? Not just sex and porn addiction, but addiction thrives in that shame. And we've got to create the space to be able to heal that.
Yeah. Well, if we can get a link to that, we'll put it in the show notes. Is that something that people can
That's a,
access from your website or?
yeah, they can just go to shametoresilience.com. It says
Oh,
the Addicted Mind podcast, but I'm also doing this very specific topic around this. I have a lot of passion for this because I know how much pain is there and how hard it is and how difficult it is. But there is a road out, right?
yeah.
And you have to work through that
Well, and
process.
that's so encouraging because it can seem, I'm sure, just so hopeless and overwhelming. Is the course something that's more suited for adult sort of partner relationships, or is it something that
This
if a
course that I
young
have
person is
going
struggling?
now is specifically built for men who have betrayed their relationship.
Okay, okay.
And it's built with the relationship in mind, but it's about them healing their shame so that they can show up and heal their partner
Mhm.
and take accountability. And we look at how shame manifests itself, but we also look about how gender impacts shame too, and male sexuality. We look at that as well and, go through that process because men have to own that part of it as well in this whole picture. And especially when we talk about pornography and how it manifests itself in our society and in our culture, we have to look at that male sexual entitlement piece to get through this as well.
Yeah, wow, what a powerful thing. Well, we'll definitely put a link to that, and if you don't know the Addicted Mind podcast, I don't know where you have been, but if you don't, please go and follow Duane there because what I love about your podcast is you have such a wide-ranging view on different topics, different angles at, addiction. I mean, it's incredible. So anyway, add that to
Oh,
your
thank you.
playlist for sure. And thank you just so much for joining us here and talking about this and kind of lifting the veil a little bit. And I think making it something that parents can approach with their young people, also start looking at that partner relationship if that's part of it. I think it helps to have somebody who can just very clearly and from a really informed and educated standpoint help us understand what we're looking at and to know that there is a way out and there is healing involved in that. What would you say? Let's focus on the more on the partner side. What would you say to somebody who's listening who is dealing with this in their relationship right now as a word of wisdom or hope?
Get support. Get support. Reach out for help, right? There's so many people out there that can help you. You don't have to do this alone. Often partners who have been betrayed feel so isolated because they can't talk to friends, they can't talk to family because of the shame and all of that. And so they feel so alone. And I want them to know that there are others out there who can support you. And if they have anything, they can go to the Addicted Mind, they can reach out to me and I can help them get resources that they need. They're not alone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you for all that you do as well.